Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well. Happy Spider-Man No Way Home premiere weekend.
I liked the pause. How do I say this?
Yeah. No spoilers, y'all. I hadn't seen it yet, so I didn't get a screener. We're not that big time, but I would have loved to have gotten a screener for that one, though.
Really? You, Mr. The sanctity of the theater experience.
No. I mean, like going to a theater. Like, I wish one of my theaters here locally had, like, 'cause I know sometimes they do have screeners for certain films.
Yeah, like the press viewings.
Yeah, the press viewing. Yeah, press screener. Yeah. So, I've actually years ago. I just by I won tickets to. It was funny enough, Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie screener when they had their feature film, and it was the presser one, and got credentials for it, and it was I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was totally listening to that as I spilt my tea on myself twice.
Isn't that kind of weak for you?
I know how to drink from a cup, and yet here I am just spilling tea all over myself, and it's just. I mean, we're not even talking The Flash yet, and here I go. But
yeah.
I know you made it very clear to me we are not allowed to talk about The Flash until the end of the show.
Yes.
Something about momentum and enthusiasm. I don't really know why, but before we get to The Flash and Hawkeye, we do have a few news items.
Yeah.
The first one is so funny to me because sometimes, Will, I feel like, and I know there are people, I know, and I love you all who listen to our show, but sometimes I feel like people at CW listen to our show or somehow like understand what we're talking about. But maybe we get give mixed messages because this week it was announced that they are developing a TV show for Gotham Knights.
Yes.
Despite you and I talking about like how like the Batman overload, like we've done this, we've seen this all over the place, we get the mythos. Like Gotham went on for 5 seasons, but very few people liked it.
Right.
And yet here we are just throwing another piece out there. And I know, I get it. This is not necessarily about Bruce Wayne. It's these other characters, but we have Titans, and Titans are going through Gotham Knights like left and right.
Totally, yeah. Because the characters in Gotham Knights, because we have Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, we have Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood, who are in the role playing game, and that's the other thing about this Gotham Knights. So it's not based on the video game, And it's not a spinoff of Batwoman because it is actually being created by members of the Batwoman creative team. So they made it very clear that it's. I'll just read from the article.
Wait.
Yeah,
it's not going to be connected to Batwoman at all, and yet it's going to air on the CW.
Right. Correct.
Okay, this is when the multiverse doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah, and it's not tied to the game either. And so it's its own independent thing and independent characters. And so far, they haven't revealed which knights will be in this series. I mean, obviously, it's still early development, but the little teaser in the article that I read from Deadline said that in the wake of Bruce Wayne's murder, his rebellious adopted son, which I want to say that's Damian, if I recall, forges an unlikely alliance with the children of Batman's enemies when they are all framed for the killing the Caped Crusader.
Okay, fascinating. You lost me when you made it very clear this is not connected to Batwoman, and yet they're both protecting the same city.
And they both have a missing Bruce Wayne, either by death or by choice.
Yeah, and they also are on a network that has over the past, I don't know, 8 years developed like, hey, we're going to have all these TV shows about in this genre. And not only that, but these characters are going to interact with each other. And it was a beautiful thing. And now they want nothing. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm so annoyed. Like I was already annoyed with this headline, and then when you brought that up, I'm like, okay, I am officially checked out of this franchise.
I don't. Again, I just don't see. I mean, it may work, but getting when I see teasers this past week for new properties like Naomi and even Superman and Lois, which are both coming back in January 11th, I'm just sort of like, okay, do something new. I mean, even with Superman and Lois, they did something new. They did something different with that character, and it worked. But this, I don't know. I like you said, I think maybe they listened to us and took us a bit to. They were like, well, they don't know what they're talking about, so we're just gonna double down on more Bat stuff.
Yeah. They're like quadrupling down on Bat, but whatever. For all we know, Gotham Knights is going to have some strange tie-in to the new show that's coming next month that we're going to check out, Naomi. Have I watched the teaser trailer? No, Will, I haven't.
No, it was only like about 45 seconds. I mean, it just expanded on the one from DC, around DC fandom, but basically reinforces that she's a big Superman fan. Yeah, and then she, runs into a mysterious energy force, and she's learning how to use her abilities, and is set in high school. So I did start to think a little bit about Stargirl with this, and and how well that show has turned out, even though it didn't start on the CW. The second season, even which was fully CW, I felt did not miss a beat. And so, and as it was, obviously produced by Ava DuVernay, so hopefully that will keep the formulaic CW dust off of it.
Right. It's all going to depend on that villain. Like this past season of Stargirl, I had some serious issues with the first half. And then as soon as the villain played a more active role, and we had those episodes, starting with that one with Yolanda, it was like, okay, we just went from 0 to like a 2 to a 10 intensity level, like a real threat, not a Wells.
Exactly. Yeah.
On. So it's just, I think that it's a good comparison you're making between Stargirl and Naomi. I do wonder though about the villain. Because Stargirl too, also I was very skeptical going in that show. First season, great villain.
Right.
And we've noticed a trend, like these shows can work really good and tell very compelling stories. The villain has to be there. Like they're very vital to these stories. Exactly.
And so, and I will freely admit, I do not know much about the source material. So, one of there's another title like that, like Doom Patrol, where I'm like, no, I'm intrigued. I'm gonna go check out the comics. So when I watch the live action version, I'll have some frame of reference here.
Yeah, I just like going into blind because I used to read a lot of books that were immediately changed into movies, adopted into movies. And then you're just sitting there thinking, oh, they didn't do that. Why aren't they doing this? What's this? Yeah. So I mean, I think it's a fine line because you want to know a little bit more to see some of the Easter eggs and just to understand some of the references, but you don't want to know too much because then you're constantly almost writing it yourself. But
right, yeah, exactly, yeah, you're right. It is a balance, but I think it like for example, Hawkeye. where I really went into that blind. Really my familiarity with that character is just like, oh yeah, I've heard of him and I'm familiar with what I've seen in the MCU. But whenever a show really works really well, it does. I'm like, oh, I may go check out the source material, and so I've been doing that a little bit, and same with like Doom Patrol, and I know they've taken obviously with any of these comic book properties, with retcons and reboots and everything, you just sort of like, okay, let me know what the seminal work is for that particular IP, and then I'll go check that out. Instead of just some of the random stuff.
Yeah, the one-offs, the zombie version.
Exactly.
Oh man. The last bit of news is Slugfest, the Russo Brothers executive-produced docuseries following the rivalry between comic book companies Marvel and DC, is premiering on Roku on December 24th. Very interested to see clips of it posted on YouTube. I think this is cool. I mean, it's funny because we're so inundated with the shows and the movies, and we have this idea that there is this rivalry, and everyone's like, no, there isn't. But that idea comes from the actual rivalry that occurred between the comic book companies themselves. So I like that these two are exploring that, especially given their history with at least Marvel. I think that's very cool, and I think that's something that a lot of fans are going to like. It's a good Christmas present.
It is, and it's a 10-part series that, as you mentioned, it will be on Roku. Kevin Smith is the narrator, so Kevin Smith fans will, of course, he is. Exactly. So you're right. I mean, it really, the history between these two companies and the rivalries and all, the Easter eggs and behind the scenes stories that I'm sure we'll get in this docuseries will be well worth the time to watching it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I hope they watch The Last Dance like at least 10 times before moving forward with the project, because that still is like my top favorite documentary series of all time. Like,
oh yeah,
that's just a masterpiece.
It really is.
And I'm not even a sports person.
Yeah.
I was so engaged in that.
Yeah. I was the same way. It's one of those things I need to do a rewatch of that series because it was just so well done.
Yeah, I feel like I watched a few of those episodes at least 5 times because I was just so overwhelmed with how it was constructed. It was so well told. But
yep, have the soundtrack on my Spotify. I mean, it's just it was just so well done. And you're right. Hopefully, Slugfest will be like that as well for the comic book fans.
Definitely. And then maybe they can get picked up by Netflix. I don't know. HBO Max. Hey.
Yeah.
Disney Plus. Come on.
Let's do it.
Oh, man. Speaking about Disney Plus, let's talk about Hawkeye. Okay. I will say, and I kind of, I've been watching Hawkeye, and I keep saying it's fine. It's entertaining. I'm still not wowed. And I'm still not wowed. However, for me, there is a clear difference between what Florence Pugh does with her character, her characterization of Yelena, and what Haley is doing with her characterization of Kate. Yeah. Like, I still see Haley, but Florence, it's like, no, this is Natasha. And it's not just the accent, okay?
No.
It's just there's something with the mannerisms and just her like ability to naturally have chemistry with these characters. And I don't know, I really liked her presence. I feel like she elevated Haley's performance more. Yeah. I know we're seeing that with whenever she's playing against Jeremy. But this is a good episode. I'm still not like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because it seems I know I've said this in the past. It seems very paint by numbers right now. Like this whole Ronin thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Yelena talking about how, like, do you really know him? He's done a lot of shit. And I'm like, girl, you're a Black Widow who was brainwashed. How many people did you kill? And also, you know your sister. She had this whole thing about a red ledger. So, like, you're going to have this epiphany in the finale about how, oh, we are the same.
Yeah.
like it's so obvious to me.
Yeah.
But it's also it's not cringe obvious. It's more like, okay, I see where this is going. Let me see if they're gonna surprise me though with something unexpected. So far they haven't, and I don't think they will. But it's just like I wish it was a little bit more creative with some of the angles on these motivations. But hey, it's Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think the surprise is the trend in line that we've seen with the Marvel shows on Disney Plus is the penultimate is where they drop the big boom.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like this ultimate, the big surprise. This one obviously it was Kingpin. But and looking back at the other ones, it was where, for example, Sam got the new Falcon, Captain America suit. And so I won't belabor that point, but I will. So I agree with everything you said as far as being a very entertaining series, and I think this series is, I think it's intentionally like this way, as far as it's I guess more grounded because we are dealing with basically very well trained humans, but they're not superhumans. They don't have magic powers. It seems to be a very there's no super serum or anything like that. This series seems to be very grounded, very street level, and I'm okay with that. I actually like that change of pace after all what we've seen up to this point this year.
So my one thing though is that I'm not complaining that this is grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we said the same thing about Winter Soldier, despite this serum. I found some of the storylines and the character arcs that played out in both Winter Soldier or Falcon and Winter Soldier, as well as WandaVision, even like that. I think it was episode 8, the whole grieving thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, there was something about the theme of what the character was going through, those thematic that like the pathos. That was more compelling. I mean, you take all of the powers away. She's a person who lost her family, her parents, her brother, her lover, like all of this grief. And that's what it's about. And so right now, like, I don't, me, I don't need spectacle. I hate all over the top. Yeah. But right now, the motivations, I'm not finding them that compelling. I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Lois and Clark earlier, or Lois and Superman. And my favorite episode is when they talked about her miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was such a grounded thing. So I'm just, I feel like a lot of what they're doing with Clint has so far been like paint by number. Like, okay, we get it. We've seen this. It's called Black Widow. Okay. Next.
Do you feel, because I as you were talking about the grief and those moments of the characters finding something, dealing with something within that is a pivotal plot point that turns the story. and and this episode was titled Ronin, and when you were talking about WandaVision, for example, and her loss, I immediately thought about Clint, where he was at the site there in the city,
right,
where the Avengers first assembled, and he took he took out his earpiece, and he basically his talk and his speech, basically apologizing again. I don't know if it's apologizing, but understand he was going to put the Ronin suit back on after all the things that happened after the blip, and him going out murdering all these people,
right,
and then begging, and then thinking he had put that behind him, and then now it's back to the forefront again, and he's going to have to go put that suit on again to deal with this latest thing, and basically asking for his dead friend's absolution for having and forgiveness for going back and regressing, I guess, to being the Ronin. So so I think that was, and then maybe at this point we've seen this. To your point, we've seen this so many times this year that it's starting to lose this. It's becoming formulaic.
Well, it's just, I wasn't moved by that scene at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like in a weird way, he's had so many conversations with his wife over the episodes. I'm surprised he didn't ask for absolution from her. Yeah. But they purposely did Natasha because you have Yelena in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, like, I wasn't surprised when he went there and said that. And I wasn't surprised. Yeah, he put back on the suit. Like, it was kind of, maybe I would have liked that scene more had he actually killed Maya. Like, you're begging for absolution. You just put on a piece of clothing, okay? You then tried to explain to Maya what really happened. Why you couldn't have just gone there as Hawkeye? Why you had to actually put on the mask? I don't really get that, because.
Well, I think he put on the mask and stuff because I think it was really. I think tying. Because when he talked to Laura, he realized that the big guy was pulling the strings, and he started to put the pieces together as far as what happened that night. Yeah. And so I think he, Maya's been looking for the Ronin because she believes that the Ronin was the person that murdered her father, and not only the person carried it out, but also was the brain trust behind it. So I think it was important for him, for Clint to go as the Ronin and show her, help her see that actually it was Kazi as the number 2 guy that and that was really behind this, because since he was the number 2 guy, he should have been at that meeting that night.
Right.
And so I think he,
it's really her uncle who's going to be behind it.
Right. Well, ultimately, Kingpin is behind it.
And that's the thing that's bothering me, is like the whole thing with Eleanor, the whole thing with Kingpin. It's all like, it's not a secret. Like, there's nothing about these reveals of, and this whole, I'm going to take your grief and turn you into a weapon. I don't know. There's just something about it where I'm like, I feel like that's a bit cliche at this point. I feel like I've seen it. Yeah. And it's not necessarily anything I've seen in these Disney Plus shows. Mm-hmm. But it's just an angle in this genre that I feel like we've seen before. Yeah. And it's just, there's nothing surprising. I mean, we were talking earlier, I brought up Stargirl and how that show is good because of the villains. Mm-hmm. I don't think this season of Hawkeye has a very compelling villain.
Well, it does. It's there. I guess the villain, and I guess we get that reveal with Eleanor. this past episode that
Which
she was the
everyone saw coming.
we all saw it coming. We thought I know I went back and listened to our discussion last week because I was like, I think we talked about this. and we didn't nail 100%, but I think we were about 75% there as far as the
even if we were 75% there last week. Watching this episode, it was so freaking obvious. I hated the scene where they were arrested the fiance. Like that was one of the most poorly acted scenes I've seen. It's just so bad.
Poor Jack the Patsy, and clearly Eleanor and Bishop Security is tied to Yelena, Yelena, but also to Val. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, this series again you're right. I mean, it's not. It's almost like a bridge series to sort of to be the springboard for other things.
Yeah, I think I think last month when we're talking Eternals, I articulated my feelings by summing it up and saying, I really like these characters. I wish they were in a different story. Mm-hmm. And I think that despite all of the tie-ins, there's just something about the story that these characters are in that I'm just not, it's not moving me. It's not making me excited or thrilled or overwhelmed. Granted, it's also following up my favorite series, Loki. So really hard.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally hear you. Like I said, I think, as I mentioned before, I think that last week's episode really got me like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens. Mm-hmm. Obviously the finale with this episode this week, that last minute, I'm just curious at this point, just curious to see, will we actually get Kingpin or as I mentioned before, is this basically the bridge that will just, obviously we know Echo is going to be a spinoff, but we also know that Yelena is going to be a future Black Widow, and Kate's going to take Clint's role in Phase 4 and 5. So this is sort of another changing of the guard in the MCU as we retire some of the legacy characters from the first 4 phases and start to bring in their younger replacements, just like we and like you see in the comic books. I mean, this is what happens, and so so I feel like this series really feels like that. I will say from the beginning of the episode though, and one of the things I don't know if we joked about and I've heard other people joke about was like, so those folks who blipped, and if you ever heard, I think this basically this episode confirms that if you were on an airplane when things blipped, that death count was still pretty high even when people returned. Yeah.
No, I like that scene. I liked how they did that.
Yeah.
For a moment, I was like, did I click on the Black Widow movie?
Yeah.
Like, what? It was so cinematic. And then it was such a different her disappearing and coming back than what we saw with that character on WandaVision. Mm-hmm. It was like a blink, a literal blip. But yeah, I really like that. Good call. The intro was good. And it'll all wrap up and conclude next week.
Yeah. Yes, it will. All
right. Let's talk about The Flash because I know Will really wants to.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah, I do.
I'm so done. Okay. So let me think. I'm sorry, everyone. Like, I want to be on board with The Flash. It's just not happening. They even threw in Arrow references, and all I could think is, why the heck is Mia Queen boxing in the middle of a 4-way corridor? Like literally, like doors all like I'm like, why do you guys have a gym right there? That's so weird. And did she set that up herself? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, really, guys, you don't have to. She doesn't have to be exactly like Oliver. I'm surprised they didn't put a salmon ladder in there.
They should have. That's all that was
Yeah,
missing. That was all that was missing. And
maybe.
yeah.
It's just they did that, and then just when I think that I can like Tom Cavanaugh again, they put him in the suit. And for some reason, John Wesley Shipp, despite his age, he can rock the Flash outfit. Tom Cavanaugh cannot rock that outfit anymore. There was something very weird about seeing him in that suit.
Do what you think it would have been better if they had stuck with the original Reverse Flash suit instead of the? Yeah.
I don't know. It was just so cringe for me. I was just watching it, like the whole scene in the police station, and I'm like, oh my god, he looks so freaking old.
Yeah.
In the suit, and it looks like it doesn't fit, and it's just weird. It looks like somebody said, Tom, you're gonna come to work today, and for Halloween, this is what you're wearing. And they didn't
off the rack instead of a custom.
Yeah, I don't know. So weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't. So I have a weird thing about this episode. The part 5. Because it felt like a protracted epilogue.
Yes.
Because going between last week's and this week's, it was just like, okay, I definitely liked episode 4 better, even with this logical faults and flaws. This one had moments. I do, one of the. I mean, just get as far as the positives out. Even though it was very cartoonish and stuff, I did like the fight scenes between Flash and Despero. Just seeing the full capabilities of Barry that I think we saw some of that in episode 2, part 2 of Armageddon. So there was that piece. I did like the banter between Caitlin and Thawne. Because I feel like Caitlin has really taken a backseat. They really focus more on Frost than Caitlin at this point, as far as Daniel Panabaker's characters. And so I just felt like just seeing that genuine anger, disgust, everything that she had towards Thawne, I thought were very positive. A good thing with the episode. And again, Damien Dark. I think they did it. Him coming into the story, thought that was a good sort of out of left field, but given how fast and loose they play with time and everything on this show now, is completely consistent with that. So those were the positive things that I thought about the episode. But I just, like I said, I felt like it was a very protracted epilogue, and I felt that if you're going to bring in Mia Queen, I mean, the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, this is just a waste of that character.
Well, I mean, they expected her to have her own TV show by now.
True.
Like, that's all I think about was like, he even used footage from
from the backdoor pilot.
Yeah. So they clearly were trying to also pay that off, and they kind of set it up for more. I don't really get what they're going with that. The one, okay, I'm going to skip right to the end and just say the one thing I liked, I did not like the moral dilemma issue. Like, should we kill Thawne or save Thawne? I was like, okay, stupid. Yeah. But I did find it interesting, and I did like this idea. And I kind of knew they were going to do this. Like, we take away his powers, which is basically killing him.
Yeah.
And Will, you talk a lot of comics to me. and you'd be surprised, I do retain something. I think that this is probably, this version of Thawne, what has led him to hate Barry.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, they did create the reverse flashpoint. They like this idea, like, no, this moment forward, that's why he's after you. Like, you didn't fix anything. This was the starting, not the end, which is very cool.
Yeah.
To the extent that I just wish that would have popped more.
Yeah.
And they would have like done something to like really make that stand out to the viewers.
Yeah.
When they kind of just brushed it aside and was like, oh, Damien appears at the beginning and then at the end and hands a stone.
Yeah. They, honestly, Sarah, you nailed it. And I made, because I was thinking about that whole moral dilemma. And they squandered, and they just did the usual beats with it. And I had two things. One, I love your point there, because that's what I was thinking as I was watching. I was like, you didn't solve the problem. You just created like as you just said, you beautifully laid it out what they just did, and creating their own reverse flashpoint there.
Yeah.
And creating why he hates Barry so much. And yes, he repeats the story. And then I was tweeting with one of our listeners last couple of days, trying to think back the speeches from earlier seasons. And I thought at first it was actually the second season where Thawne told Barry a variation of the reason of the story that he did in this episode, as far as why he hated him so much. But you're right. I mean, I think all those things together, and then taking his powers away, which again, speaking of, as I mentioned earlier, comics retcon and reboot things all the time. And that was one of the things actually that did happen in the comic book. Cutting his Thawne off from the negative Speed Force, that makes even, because he's like, you made my life, now I'm in hell. I mean, that was the thing. And they should have put that in the middle of the episode, because then instead of this namby-pamby and Joe like doing his thing, and I was just like, no, it's like, this has been done in other places and so much better.
It was just, I just am so tired of, I don't know, like you said, this has been done in other places in the same show.
In the same show, yes. I mean, what they really should have, and another missed opportunity they had, they could have like really dug deeper into what obligation do we have to save someone who created their own fate.
Right.
I mean, it'd been different if, and I know they tried to like construct it that Thawne showed up at Central City Police and in front of everybody, and Flash, you have to save me, and if you don't, you're evil. But I don't know. But that again didn't seem, that could easily be explained away by the Flash to be like, look, I didn't do anything wrong. This fool was the one who created his own. He created his own destiny here, and if he disappears, that's on him. It's not like Barry. It's not like their arguments would have made sense if Barry was the one who had like gone out, changed the timeline again, and in doing so, create a situation that that Barry created, then it would have been Barry's fault and Barry's responsibility for murdering Thawne, but not the way they had structured it in this story. So I think your point would have been a much more compelling episode and much more logically consistent with why he hates Barry so much.
Yeah, I think overall this whole event, they started with Despros, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which then bled over into this Thawne thing.
Yeah.
Which led to last week's episode, which was all Thawne.
Mm-hmm.
And then this week's episode, which was a mix.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, The Despros thing didn't work with me from the beginning, and it got really cheesy when he went on. I'm the hero of this earth. I'm this.
Yeah, he became the villain of the week.
Like you. A good villain doesn't say, "Oh, I'm the hero of the story," because we always say that. We say the best villains, they think they are the hero.
Right. Yeah.
This guy literally says it, and I was like, "Nope, bad writing, bad freaking writing."
Yep.
Why would you have him say that? Like, that is so stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, so cliche.
It was.
But you try to end both story arcs, which reduces each one that could have, like, they had potential to really be compelling overall arcs, and unfortunately, by mixing them together and getting in this weird epilogue thing, you ran out of time to really explore the nuances here.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Either one. And especially, and I think it's more detrimental with the Thawne, because we've seen Thawne for seasons.
Yeah.
And we kind of need this bookend, and this would have been a really good bookend for that. And I think that's what they were trying to do. But unfortunately for me, the execution just wasn't there overall, because you had all this other stuff going on, and it became over convoluted.
Yeah. It did. And yeah, and so with that, and then with the whole Damien Dark and his Nora storyline. I mean, I was trying to figure out, like, okay, now what does this mean for the overall, and then Damien giving Joe the time stone,
mm-hmm.
and looking ahead to the teasers that we got at the end of the episode with Nora West Allen and Bart coming back to 2014. And so, of course, again, now we see basically that, Eddie coming back and Ronnie coming back is just basically them altering the timeline once again. So I wonder. So I guess Damien giving Joe that and saying you have this when you need it. It will basically set things right for, basically those two people, going back to non-existence again. Because they shouldn't, or maybe Ronnie will stick around and. Because they did have that line earlier in the season with Caitlin. I guess the very first episode of the season with when Barry and Caitlin were sitting in jitters,
mm-hmm.
And she was talking about moving on and stuff. So, so clearly that was a setup for Ronnie coming back and her dealing with that and possibly losing him again.
Which is so weird because It's been seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's been seasons.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird that you're gonna bring back Ronnie now. Like, she hasn't said a word about him in seasons, like
right.
3 or 4 seasons, and now all of a sudden it's gonna be this big arc.
Right. There's that. Yeah. And then the same with Eddie, because Iris has moved on. She's married to Barry now, and so unless this, I guess, basically bringing Eddie back, since Eddie basically killed himself to end the Thawne line. I guess this is probably part of their convoluted way of helping to reestablish Thawne in the later centuries, so that to your earlier point, this is he will remember
he can have kids.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
About Will.
Yeah, no, but to the point, I guess in story, this is how, to your point, why Eobard later, will remember this moment centuries later, and Barry taking his powers away, and it's the whole causality loop, I guess, with having Eddie back to sow a seed and keep the family line going.
dig in that hole. I'm just gonna continue to let you.
I'm just saying. I don't know. But I mean, that seems the only reason why they would have it bring Eddie back. I mean, I
honestly forgot he was coming back.
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about the teaser that they had at the end of the episode this week. So, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I saw that teaser.
Yeah.
And then I've moved on with my life, and I'm just like, okay, I'll understand more hopefully in March. Yeah. Or I'll get more angry in March. We'll see. The show has its ups and its downs.
It definitely. I mean, it definitely has its ups and downs. It's definitely, compared to where it has been, it's definitely better, but it still has a lot of problems, which we identified this evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK. Can't wait to. I was gonna say, can't wait to talk Spider-Man with you.
In my defense, you never add things like that.
I know. I know. I'm super hyped to see this film this weekend.
Yeah, he's super hyped. He's gonna see it 2 days before me and probably spoil it for me.
Nope, I will be good. I would never do that to you. You know that.
You have done that so many times.
No, I haven't. I just said it was good or bad.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.cnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, geek out. You're welcome.